Hey guys, Brad here from Scooter Street. Today we have another video in our zip build series. We're going to be finally attacking the transmission fully. So we're going to be doing an MHR Variator upgrade. So this is the MHR Racing Variator, which is sort of one step above the normal standard Multivar 2000, which we previously installed on this scooter. Now after that last video, we actually pulled it back out so we could get a better reference point for this video later, because we want to compare what the stock Variator is like to the MHR Variator. Now, transmission tuning can kind of get overlooked because it's not as flashy and fun as, say, doing a cylinder kit or an exhaust. But I need to stress it is really important because particularly on a 50, you're working with such a limited amount of power to begin with. Even if you have a 70 kit and an exhaust, two-strokes have such a narrow band at which they create power. And so when you're working with a limited amount of power that operates within a very narrow band, it's very important that you access every little bit of it that you possibly can. And that's the whole point of a CVT, and that's the whole point of transmission tuning. Getting the bike, getting the most out of the bike that you possibly can because you're working with such a limited amount to begin with. And particularly if you have a cylinder kit and an exhaust on your bike, it's wasted potential if you don't access everything out of it that you can. And this is what we're doing today with this MHR Variator. Now the last video was really just an install. Today we're going to do an install and then we're going to take you through the full tuning process with this Variator to get it set up correctly for the rest of the setup on this scooter. Okay, no more talking, let's get into it. I'm going to take the bike for a pre-test ride so we have a baseline to compare to after the Variator is installed. Oh, geez, it's a day for it. It's a cracking day. Okay, she gets up and goes all right. Probably attribute that to the MHR rep and the 𝐂𝐡𝐞𝐤 are just a match made in heaven, those two. But I think we can definitely get some more out of it. So I'm going to pull the stock Variator out of it. We're going to compare that to the MHR. Then we're going to do the MHR install and the tune. Obviously, one of the frustrations with the zip in particular, so these panels get in the damn way every time I'm going to pull the transmission cover off. Okay. Now if you're gentle, you can creep it past like that. And then you clip this little holder there out, and then you can get to all the bolts. Okay. Oh, she's pretty warm. Also, I need to remove this. Okie dokie, factory Variator is out. Let's get our MHR Variator out. We can actually do a bit of a comparison between the two. Okay, so right away we have some fairly instantly noticeable differences. So firstly, the MHR basket has rubber seals on the inside of the shaft, and it also has lube here. On top of that, the actual Variator shaft itself has this little recess and holes in it. It's actually a fair bit bigger and beefier diameter as well. Now the other really big difference here is the fan pulley that comes with the MHR. Obviously is quite different to the factory fan pulley. Now, one of the most instantly noticeable differences is it's an all-in-one unit instead of having the plastic fan on the outside. And let's see, outside of that, there we go. This obviously just goes in there. So really it's just the combination of those two that makes it look so different. However, the other big difference, if you have a keen eye, you'll notice that the factory outer pulley has teeth on the outside. These teeth are for the engagement of the electric starter pinion. Now obviously the Velocity one doesn't have teeth. What does that mean? If you install this variator, you lose your electric start. Gone. Kickstart only. The kickstart actually engages from these little teeth in here, so it still functions, but like I said, you lose your electric start. That is a bit of a pain, but you know, again, it's one of those things you just need to balance up between the practicality of what you're looking for and the performance of what you're looking for. Now, getting back to the seals and the unusual looking variator shaft that we spoke about earlier. Now, as would, you know, be logical with the grease that comes in the kit, this is a greased or lubricated variator. Now, the reason for this, it makes it a lot smoother and more fine-tunable because there's less resistance between the shaft and the basket. But there's a couple of sort of eccentricities that come along with this. One of them is because the seals are sitting in, you might be able to see it there, but they're actually like a little flap that's sitting in like that. So if you just jam the variator shaft in there, the front-facing seal that you push into is going to be fine, but when you try and push the seal through here, it can actually invert that seal and damage it, which is why Molossi have provided this little piece here. The idea of this is it's a guide, and it stops the seal from being inverted as you push the shaft through. Now, really important with this is that you read the instructions and put grease in only the correct places. Because obviously, if you just chuck grease, you know, wherever haphazardly into the variator, it's going to leak out, it's going to get under the face, and the belt's going to slip instead of gripping what it's supposed to do. You're probably going to ruin the belt, and the bike's not going to go anywhere. So it's very important that you read the instructions. Now, Molossi have gone to great lengths to try and keep the grease where it's supposed to be, hence what these seals are actually for. The seals here are to keep the grease inside where the bushings are for the shaft, so it can't escape. These little holes here are just to allow it to breathe. The reason the grease can't get out or won't get out and get into the shaft and out into the rest of the variator, because it's spinning quite fast, those centripetal forces are obviously causing the grease to always want to go out, not in, and escape out. So the main thing here is keep the grease where it's supposed to be. Now, because you obviously need this this little piece here, I don't know what you would call it, to actually be able to put the shaft through, very important that you put this somewhere safe, because when you go to tune your variator later, or say you got to do a variator service, if you happen to pop your shaft out of the actual basket, you're not going to be able to get it back through without difficulty or risk of damaging this seal here or inverting it. So keep this in a safe spot, because I don't believe that you can order these separately. My understanding is they only come in the kit. Okay, instructions. Istruzioni generale. Let's go to English, eh? Might be a little bit easier to read. There we go, general instructions. Now, this is a bit of a gripe I have with some of the newer manufacturers' instructions. There's nothing in here about lubricating this, which is a little bit annoying, but they want you to scan this QR for a tutorial. So let's do that. There we go. Now, granted, the video is actually not bad, but basically what they're wanting you to do, it's been a little while since I installed one of these, so even I just wanted to double check, is there's like a little recessed ring inside the variator basket. They want you to lubricate that. They want you to lubricate the inside and the outside of the shaft, primarily around this ring here, and then insert the actual shaft from the front of the face to the back. So let's go ahead and do that. Don't want to get unnecessarily dirty. The other thing with this is, say I get this grease all over my hands, which is going to be a pretty thick, sort of slimy grease. If I'm not wearing gloves, I'm going to go ahead and spread it over the rest of the parts. And one thing you don't want, like I was saying, is grease where it's not supposed to be. So let's do the inside first, shall we? I want you to spread it around with like a paddle pop stick or something, but I don't have anything that specialised, so let's just go with this, shall we? Pretty happy with that. Let's work on the outside. Now, like the video actually is, like I said, it's not bad. It's frustrating that it's not in the instructions, but it's not bad. But it does give you a pretty good idea of how much grease I actually want you to put on, and it's not an excessive amount. It's a pretty conservative amount. So I'm just going to do what they did in the video, because I don't want to put too much on, and then it just turns into a huge mess. There we go. Put a little bit on the outside of the seals. The other thing it says is not to use any form of degreaser or any product like that around these seals, because it will damage it. Alright, so we're going to gently And there we go. It's really just to guide this component, to guide it through. All right, I've got some excess grease around here. I'll go ahead and wipe that off. It's sliding nice and freely, so I'm very confident that grease is doing its job. Now, once that shaft is in, do not let it slip out. Make sure it stays within both of those seals. Now, before we go a ton further, I just want to talk a little bit about the difference with the actual basket itself, what makes this variator quite a lot better than the factory variator. Now, obviously there are differences like the ramp plate and the sizes of many of the components, like the guides are quite a lot bigger and beefier, the shaft is quite a lot bigger and beefier, etc. But the actual size of the basket compared to the factory is different. The angles are different. The angles of the actual like slides inside where the rollers actually slide, they're different as well. But one of the other components and one of the things that makes the MHR Variator specifically quite a bit different to even the Multivar 2000, just the standard Multivar 2000, is the size. So if we come here, the outer diameter of the basket on the factory is what, 98.3-ish. The size of the MHR is 99.65. So I've got about a 1.35 mil difference. Now you might think, oh, 1.35 mil, that's, you know, that's not going to do anything. But you've got to remember, when the bike is at its very top speed, the belt is all the way at the top of the basket. 1.35 mil, I know from tuning previously, 1.35 mil is easy 3 or 4 k's an hour, easy. Is it going to make a drastic difference? No. But the thing with the MHR Variator is what Malossi are trying to do is improve on the factory. And so they're just trying to get lots of little increases and improvements that all together make a big improvement. Now the rollers that come in the MHR Variator kit are crazy, crazy light. Because this kit is primarily aimed at a scooter with a full racing cylinder installed, like a MHR, like a Bridgeport cylinder kit. The reason they're so light is because they're designed to allow that cylinder kit to rev up really high where it makes its power. Now this is what we've got on this bike is a 9-port MHR rep, which obviously doesn't need to rev that high. So these rollers are going to be way, way too light. I think they're 4.3 and 3.8 that come in the kit, 2 different sets. Now the ones that we had in the factory Variator were 5 gram. I know from experience we're probably going to end up at pretty similar roller size, maybe very slightly heavier. But just to show you, you know, sort of the difference and what it feels like when the bike's over revving, I'm going to put the 4.3 gram set in just to begin with. You never know, they might be okay. It's always good to test. There's not obviously a drastic difference between 4.3 and 5, so it's not going to be totally outside of the realm. So go ahead and chuck the rest of this basket together. Chuck our guides on. Okay. This is obviously the washer that replaces the factory washer. It's a little bit thicker, so it's important that you do put this in. Let's go ahead and chuck the basket in. So, washer in first. Gently. Alright, obviously we're not going to need our starter pinion anymore because this is the part that actually jumps out and grabs the teeth on the outer pulley, on the factory outer pulley, which we're getting rid of. So, don't need that anymore. Now it's time to get this factory torque spring out, and we'll change it out for the Malossi purple one. It's nice the bike's cooled down a little bit now, it's not burning my hands anymore. We're going to get this nut off, which is a 34 mil. Alright. Whoa, there it is. Okay. We'll swap this over. Okay. Just to be safe, it is good to pen mark this stuff. Squeeze the belt down on the torque driver. There we go. Alright. Our new Malossi outer fan pulley. Now the important thing is making sure that the belt doesn't bind up on the fan pulley, that it's going on unimpeded. Now, good thing with these Piaggios, the front and the rear nut on these is exactly the same size, so you can't stuff it up. Okay, solid. Give it a little rotate so the belt can work its way back up. Okay. Okie dokie. I'm going to go ahead and chuck the cover back on, get the plastics back sitting down so I can take it for a test ride. And we'll yeah, take it out on the street and see how it goes. Alright, kickstart only. We're in race mode now. Alright, let's see how it goes. Too light, but geez, there's a massive difference in the smoothness. So I just popped the cover off because I'm going to chuck those 5-gram rollers in the Variator. But just a couple of things I wanted to point out. On this one, I actually didn't put any pen marks on it, which I usually would, because it's just taking it for an initial trial run. But you can hopefully see just there, it's getting almost to the very edge of the Variator. So that's good. You can sort of see a bit better down here. I didn't fully clock it at its absolute top speed, but very close to, so maybe it would have gotten to the edge anyway, but I'm going to put some pen marks on it anyway. The other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, putting the 5-gram rollers in the Malossi Variator, on the MHR Variator, you may be asking yourself, well, if it's running the same size rollers as the factory Variator, how actually different is it? And if you're asking yourself this question, there's something that you haven't considered, and that's that we have the purple spring in here. Now, the MHR purple spring is 82% heavier than the factory spring. Now, putting a stiffer contra spring in the bike has nearly the same effect as lightening the rollers. So 5-gram rollers with a purple contra spring is a significantly lighter overall setup than 5-gram rollers with the factory spring. Here's another way of saying it. 5-gram rollers with the purple spring is a significantly higher revving setup than 5-gram rollers with the factory spring. Now, the reason it can still run so well with 5-gram rollers and an almost double the strength rear contra spring is because the geometry inside the MHR Variator is significantly different from the factory. So although we're running the same weight rollers, which I think they probably will be really good, those 5 grams in this, overall, the setup has been significantly changed. It just so happens we've ended up at a pretty similar roller weight. 5-gram rollers are in, and I've chucked a pen mark here, so we can come back after the test ride and check how far out our belt's getting. Something I'd probably recommend, or do, if this was my bike, is I'd probably put a side stand on it and get rid of the center stand, because one annoying thing about when you kickstart only is you can't kickstart it with the center stand down. So every single time you want to start it, you're having to chuck it up on the center stand and kick it. So I'd probably put a side stand on it so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, that's a really instantly noticeable difference. See what we get to. reckon we can go a little bit heavier. Might even go up to like a 5.5. I don't know how well it translates in the video, but from the feeling of the bike, we've picked up a lot of acceleration at the start, up to probably about 40 k's an hour. It's a rocket ship. It's wanting to lift the front wheel, unless I sort of lean over it a little bit, which it wasn't doing before. After about 50, it starts to run out of steam a little bit. The difference between the 4.3 and the 5s is it's picked up a lot of acceleration everywhere, because with the 4.3 grams, it was obviously over revving. I feel it's still over revving. So particularly after about 50 k's an hour, it's sort of run out of steam. So I feel like if I put the 5.5 grams in there, it's going to sort that out. Now, as with everything to do with transmission tuning on a CVT, it's always about striking that balance. So I might put the 5.5s in there, and that mid-range to top end is a lot better, but it sacrifices a little bit of acceleration. I might put the 5.5s in and it's just perfect. So, you know, it's just about striking that good middle ground between, you know, really cracking initial acceleration, but also getting that sort of upper mid-range and top end that you want as well. I think it's worth mentioning here as well, this is where preference and application does start to come in a little bit. There's not like a right or wrong way of tuning it. If you just wanted to pop wheelies and do burnouts and skids and stuff on this bike, how it is now, it's perfect. It'll pop the front wheel, no dramas. If you're not worried about top speed or just general rideability after about 60 k's an hour, it's perfect. On this bike, for me, if it was my bike, I want to kind of strike a middle ground a bit better so I can sort of cruise at 80 k's an hour with the flow of traffic. If you're not worried about that, how it is now is perfect for wheelies and burnouts and crazy stuff like that. But it depends on the application. So another good example, my white Piaggio Zip that we did the big burnout and build breakdown video on the channel a couple months ago, that bike has a racing cylinder kit, an exhaust, big high-end setup, but it doesn't have an inner rotor. Now, because it doesn't have an inner rotor ignition, the initial acceleration with the factory flywheel, it sucks. So to counteract this, I've made the rollers super light. This makes it really fun for burnouts and wheelies, but it means after about 50 k's an hour, it sucks. But the other option was put the rollers at more of a middle ground, and the initial acceleration sucks, but then the mid-range and top end is pretty good. So for me, the application on that bike is just to muck around and have fun. So I set it up for that. Super light rollers, just so I can pop wheelies and muck around and have fun. If it was a bike that I was generally riding around on, it was my, you know, daily rider or something I took out for, you know, a longer sort of ride on the weekends, I would put an inner rotor ignition in it, and that would allow me to make the rollers a bit heavier and get a bit more of a mid-range setup. So what I'm saying is it depends on the application and your preference. If you're building a daily rider, I'd probably put it somewhere more in the middle, right? If you're building a toy just to muck around with your mates with, probably how this is now would be right on the money. So just consider what you're trying to do and what you want to do with the bike when you're doing transmission tuning, because it's not this way's right, this way's wrong. It's a what do you want to do with it, and does it do what you want it to do? Let's quickly check out our pen marks. So we got almost all the way to the edge, but again, like I said, I didn't ring it all the way completely out. So that's probably, you know, the explanation for that little bit left on the outside there. Okie dokie, round 3. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'd say overall, we've drastically increased the initial acceleration and the mid-range. I think there's probably a little bit more that could be gained there at the top end if we wanted to do some fine tuning. I feel like the top end, how it is probably the same, if not a very slight improvement on factory. But you need to remember, again, it's a balancing act. So if I wanted to chase a little bit more top end, I'm probably going to end up just starting now to sacrifice a little bit of initial acceleration. So Piaggio ZIP, they're not built for a high-speed machine, a little baby 10-inch skateboard wheels. So, you know, my personal opinion on these bikes is what they're fun for is everything up to 80 k's an hour. I've had one before that went over 100 and it was mega scary. So this bike, how it is, particularly with this setup, I feel like it's really good how it is. But if you did want to chase those extra gains, you definitely could do that. You know, maybe try a 5.7 gram or even a 5.5 and 5.7 combo and just sort of muck around with that very, very top end to see if you can squeeze a little bit more out of it. Now, if you really wanted to go to that next level and getting more top speed was really important to you, the next step up from this would be to put the matching rear pulley in the bike. So this MHR Variator, which is what they call the MHR Team 2, it's actually the Variator in the MHR Overrange transmission kit. So if you were to buy the rear pulley and the belt that comes along with this kit, you must buy the belt as well, then you would have a full Overrange transmission kit. Now, the benefit in this is in the same way that the MHR Variator is a slightly larger diameter, the MHR rear pulley, or I often refer to as the torque driver, is also a slightly larger diameter. So a larger rear pulley gives you more low gearing, and a larger front pulley, or Variator, gives you more high gearing. So with the two of them together, you get the best of both, but the only way that you can get the best of both is with a slightly longer belt, which the MHR Overrange belt is very slightly longer, gives it that ability to get all the way to the top of the front and the rear pulley. So this means with the full setup and the belt, you're going to get more low gearing and more high gearing as well. So you're going to get better initial acceleration and you're going to get better top speed as well. I can tell you from having installed one of these Overrange transmissions before, it is a dramatic difference, particularly on a high-end setup. But even a sort of middle-of-the-road, mid-range setup, it still will make a big difference. You just need to tune it slightly differently, in the same way we have with this setup today. Slightly heavier rollers just to compensate for the fact that it's really designed for a race setup. It doesn't mean that you can't make it work, because it's so tunable, you can make it work in even a mid-range setup. Another cool thing is because you can do just the Variator and it still works with the factory rear pulley, it means that you can break up the cost a little bit if this was your aim. So you can do the MHR Variator like we've done today and tune it for the factory rear torque driver, you know, save all your pennies and then buy the rear pulley and the belt at a later date and then retune it for that setup. It breaks the cost up a little bit, but another thing I've mentioned on my channel before is doing things one at a time in stages. It can be quite beneficial because it gives you a bit more of an understanding of how to tune the bike because you're being forced to do it, and the more you do it, the better you'll get. But it also means, say you spend, you know, whatever, $300 or something on the front Variator, you get, on the Overrange Variator, you get straight away to feel the difference that $300 made. And then when you do the rear pulley and the belt, you get to feel the difference that just that expenditure made. If you just go out and spend $500 or $600 on the full Overrange setup, my personal feeling is you don't get the same sense of satisfaction because you're not getting to see the difference that each of those components has made. So it's up to you. If you're happy just to dump a bunch of money into the bike, I'd highly recommend the Overrange setup. It seriously makes a big difference. But doing it incrementally can be really beneficial as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Look, hopefully there was some good info in there for you. We really appreciate your support. All the likes, comments, and particularly the subscriptions really makes a big difference for us. The more you guys put into this channel, the more we can as well, and that's our aim. So again, we appreciate your support, and if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, we really highly encourage you to do that if you want to see more content like this, because again, the more you guys put into it, the more we can too. Another thing I always forget to mention is if you're after any of the parts that you've seen in this video or any other part for any scooter, hit up our website. We do special orders all the time, and we obviously sell all the parts that we fit in these videos as well.